All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We got it 10 after 08 or 2000 tonight. So it's Sunday evening. It's time for the Brushfire Mind. I'm Christopher Lowry, your rogue scholar, and I've got our resident libertarian Steve Rodemeyer on the line with us. That's right. I wish you luck with the doxing, libtards. So it is Super Bowl Sunday, and I'd be lying if I said I wasn't watching the game a little bit right now. But I'll try to stay focused. Okay. It's just five old white dudes. Well, I guess the guy on the left is kind of a young brother, but they just running their mouths. Nothing doing. Okay. So football game's going on. Last I checked the score, Falcons were up 21-3. Well, they were killing them. Victory is at hand. And you heard it here first. We announced that the Falcons would win the game back on January 1st. So tonight we get to see one of our earliest predictions come true, and that's good for our reputation, right? Right?
I'd like to think so.
Just the guys that said Trump would win also said the Falcons would win. And of course, that all credit for that prediction, if it turns out to be correct, goes to Cameron. And if he fails, he also gets to suffer ridicule. So that's clear before the prediction's fulfilled. So enough rambling about sports ball. It's time for the fallacy of the week. Of course, we open with the fallacy of the week, and we're opening this week for the fallacy of the week. We're talking about the a priori argument. Now, when we say a priori argument in reference to fallacy, you're not talking about stuff like what's his face? Damn. Suddenly I'm forgetting the name of influential philosophers that argued about flipping a priori. Okay. Anyway, the word a priori, something is prior to, existed before. Now, when you talk about a priori knowledge, you're getting into the philosophy of how knowledge works and what knowledge is, and you're asking questions about whether or not there are things that the mind knows, whether or not there is knowledge that we have before we begin the conscious acquisition of knowledge. As infants, as even fetuses, are there instincts, are there things that you already instinctually know? When you're born, do you have the a priori ability to differentiate colors and shapes from one another? And there's still argument to that. There's argument as to whether or not you're physically capable of doing it, whether or not your eyes have attuned to that point, or you're just cognitively incapable of having a reaction to processing that information. That conversation is still ongoing. There are still things that we cannot know yet, that we cannot touch intellectually. Oh, this must be the Lady Gaga halftime show. It's distracting because it's bizarre. Okay, so there you go. Lady Gaga is losing her shit on the TV. So when you get to the a priori fallacy, what you're talking about is beginning argument from the position that an argument is sacrosanct, that certain positions cannot be argued against because they're dogmatic, they're doctrinal, or they're simply fact. Now, there is such a thing as a fact, which is inarguable. Sort of. You get into levels of argument, sure. We can have an argument about whether or not there is such a thing as physical matter. But if we're arguing whether or not this is a desk outside of some super metaphysical questions of the composition of matter and just the straight existential presence of objects in reality. No, unless we're going down that road, desk, solid, object. Okay, that's a fact. That is a fact in our reality. Now, if your position is so-and-so's argument is invalid because so-and-so is a racist, well, hold on a minute. Is that a known variable? Is their racism proved and known? Or are we talking about somebody who has said, I am a racist? I hold one race to be above another? Is that a statement that has actually been advanced by the accused? Because if not, you need some evidence to support the claim. Now, one of the great problems with, and this is why we do the fallacy of the week, because the left speaks from fallacy. They have to speak from fallacy for the same reason that they have to resort to violence, because at the core of their entire doctrinal dogma is a moral complacency and comfort with the coercion of people. You cannot lean left without first being comfortable with taking from people by force, by hook or by crook, as it were. If you're not morally comfortable with causing someone to take an action against their will, then you cannot lean left politically. In fact, you cannot lean left enough to be a true Republican without being comfortable with that. So that's our fallacy of the week. And we got a little twofer going on here. I want to talk about the taboo fallacy. It's essentially the opposite of that. The taboo fallacy is when you take that sort of position. This is accepted, this is standard, this is inarguable. And instead of saying you can't argue against my position because it's inarguable, the taboo fallacy is quite the opposite. You begin by saying you cannot argue from X position because I will not accept it as a fact or as a position. I will not accept it to have validity. That's the taboo side. So that's our fallacy of the week. So look out for that a priori argument. Now that you've got kind of an understanding of what an argument from a priori is, of what a fallacy that involves assuming facts, not an evidence, essentially. Let's talk about Antifa, the flaming fascists that call themselves anti-fascists. Let's talk about how the left likes to play with words. And Steve, I'm actually going to ask you to talk, before we talk about the definition swap scandal that needs to be addressed and needs to be decried. I want you to talk a little bit about the word liberal.
Well, it's pretty easy to find, and one of the best videos I'd seen I'd love to share, but we've been in trouble for some of that in the past. But look up Bill Whittle's bit on the truth behind the tactics the left takes. One thing to remember about the word fascist that he brought up is that the root word fasci is essentially a bundle of sticks. And the fascisti, or the Mussolini supporters who believed in fascism as being righteous and worth being forced onto people, was the whole bundle of sticks being stronger than an individual stick, the bundle of sticks being more important than the individual stick. So by being fascisti, you believe that everyone should be forced to be a part of this bundle of sticks because it's better off for everyone than it would be for one on their own. So the idea that the entire movement started with Mussolini, who was aligned with the National Socialist German Workers' Party coming out of Germany at the time, should kind of show you the whole National Socialist and fascist thing easily aligned and of somewhat the same root beliefs.
Okay, and I can fix this in editing. But what I asked was, before we get into the fascist stuff, I want you to talk about the word liberal and how the word liberal has been stolen and altered.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was
dig into that first, and then we'll go after the Merriam-Webster's dictionary thing.
Yeah,
I can pull this down and edit it.
Okay, and feel free, anybody who sees this before that, to go ahead and laugh in the comments, because I evidently wasn't paying attention. So, stealing the definition of liberal, and I rail about this a lot on Facebook that I want my word back. Liberal, we've talked about before on the show. The root word liber is obviously to be free, to unfettered, so to speak. The idea of a liberal used to mean the one who believes in the most freedom for the most people. And it used to be that conservative could have been taken to mean, I suppose, conserving power. It would be the argument in how it should have come about, conserving things as they are or freeing more people. What it's come to mean, it seems to be, there you have it. That's one of the places I like to see it. Derail my train of thought. See, being an ADHD kind of fella anyhow, that didn't help at all. Anyway, the idea that liberal now somehow means we know what's best and everyone should be forced to believe what we say or silenced is not a liberal philosophy at all. That is more a fascist belief, the whole is more important than the individual.
Right. The thing that we currently refer to as a liberal, the thing that we call a liberal in the modern parlance, they're liberal with throwing away money that they have coerced from other people against their will.
Yes, they give liberally of other people's things. Yeah.
Yeah. As far as liberty, that's an interesting thing to dissect. A person's liberty. We have the Bill of Rights. First Amendment, freedom of speech. Second Amendment is one of our favorites.
No, it's mine. The first two, or we wouldn't be here.
I'm only not wearing a gun right now because I have pajama pants on under the desk. That's the beauty of doing a talk show like this. I don't actually have to have pants on. But
makes you wonder about all the news anchors since television started, doesn't it?
No, I'm certain they're all just sitting there in their drawers.
Well, I digress. Go ahead.
But freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom to keep and bear arms, the freedom from having to bivouac national soldiers, the right to secure your person's properties and papers, the freedom from illegal search and seizure, the freedom to face a jury of your peers, face your accuser, from the freedom.
Yeah.
The thing is about freedom, your freedom ends at arm's reach. I have the freedom to speak my mind, to say anything that I like. I can even say that I hate someone because of what they look like or who they worship or who they sleep with. It doesn't matter. I absolutely have the freedom to express that.
And more importantly, because the speech is unpopular, is why the freedom is enumerated, that we have the right to do such by nature. Not that the government has to allow you, or that the government says you can say that. It's that the government has no say in what you're allowed to voice. That does not mean everyone else has to accept it. That simply means you are allowed to say what is on your mind.
There's a big damn difference between the freedom to speak and the freedom to be heard.
Yes. Yes, that is
true. You do not have the freedom to be heard because I have the freedom to not hear you. Mm-hmm. In every bit as much as I have the freedom to speak my mind, I have the freedom to ignore your speech.
Or to criticize it.
I do not, however, have the freedom to prevent it. Because as long as I want to argue that we, the people, have the freedom to speak. I cannot continue to argue that I believe that if I attempt to take that freedom away from you by setting a college on fire.
That's right. Yeah, when you are trying to stifle someone else's free speech, you do not believe in free speech, period.
Now, let's talk for a moment about organizations that have actively used propaganda and force and intimidation and terrorism to silence the speech of their opposition. Let's see. Off the top of my head, I can think of, I has a flowchart. That's not it.
Nope, wrong folder.
I lost the flowchart. Damn.
It's like on the Muppet Show.
Oh, it's right where I thought it was. It's right where I thought it was. It's just under this. It's under this heavy ass black notebook.
That's good. It'll be nice and flat.
Aha!
That's fancy.
This is the more developed Overton window, and as you can see, you can't read it, but I'll just point because okay, there's the far left and there's the far right over there, with the far left being absolute totalitarian dictatorship.
You're on the wrong left. My left is on your right.
Whatever. From left to right. So I developed it from
read blue and red as Republican and Democrat. I get it.
So Republicans are not on the right. They are to the right of Democrats. There's a big difference. On my little chart here, the way that I do this, there's a blue side and a pink side. There's a blue side and a red side. The left side of the line is everything that is on the wrong side of the non-aggression principle.
Okay. Chase it down.
Okay, so basically, at the right of center, you have the last vestiges of the non-aggression principle, where you, under the non-aggression principle, it's not pacifism.
Right.
Pacifism is madness.
Pacifism is anti-reactionary, even, which is the wrong answer.
Pacifism is madness. Pacifism is intellectual, moral, and actual suicide as a dogma. The non-aggression principle, however, is not pacifism. The non-aggression principle is rooted in the non-initiation of force, right. The non-initiation of violence.
Of coercion.
Of coercion.
Where you want to put it.
And it's important. It's important to keep coercion as part of that definition, because within the realm of the non-aggression principle there's a lot of philosophy, and you're talking about men who have the intellectual capacity to use neurolinguistic programming to cause people to take actions against their will without their knowledge.
Right, which just because there's no violence involved doesn't make it a moral and honorable or an acceptable practice, quite honestly.
Right. In fact, that whether or not mental coercion can be classified as violence is its own very interesting and compelling philosophical argument, which we
could get into another time.
Go down sometime, but that's a whole 2 hour at least rabbit hole to trail. So we're not going to go down that route. But the contemporary dogmatic statement that's made by the left, the kind of position that the left takes on what is true, is that communism is the farthest left of the political spectrum, and fascism is the farthest right of the political spectrum. Okay, I'll give you a half true on that. Communism is very, very far left, but not on the political spectrum, on the economic spectrum. The farthest left of the political spectrum, the farthest left of the political spectrum. Let me say that again. That's 3, because it takes 3 times to remember. The farthest left you can go on the political spectrum is fascism.
That is correct. Remember, the bundle is greater than the individual.
Fascism is a total. Okay, there's one step further left, an absolute totalitarian autocracy, the absolute rule by one man. But even that, there's really no such thing at the national level. You look at North Korea, where Kim Il Sung, Kim Jong Il, Kim Jong Un is the current one. The brilliant comrade. Yeah, the dear leader is dead. The great leader is dead. The brilliant comrade is in charge right now. But the great leader is president for eternity. The dear leader, Kim Jong Il, is general for eternity, even though they're both dead. And so the one that's in charge of North Korea right now, Kim Jong Il's son, Kim Jong Un, is it's actually his father that is the general of the military, and his grandfather that is still the president for eternity, even though they're both dead. And his official political position is actually the leader of the Labor Party. Just because, well, liberals are fucking crazy.
No, leftists are fucking crazy.
Yes. Leftists are crazy. That's right. Leftists are insane.
Told you. Okay. Word back.
So anyway, but even there, where Kim Jong-un has absolute last word authority, the government is still an organization of people who have jobs and responsibilities to do. Now, all authority is centralized in the national government, and that is fascism. That is fascism. So, logistically, an actual totalitarian autocracy cannot exist at the national level. It actually has to have a fascist government that is ruled over by the autocrat. But that's, I'm sorry, that's a semantics thing, but I'm kind of a stickler on that kind of semantics, because it is an important distinction, because if we find the far left with as much actual political control as the Republicans have currently in the United States, then a figurehead like Barack Obama would be, a sort of de facto totalitarian autocrat. And for everybody that cries about Trump using executive orders, we covered that last week. Steve, you missed it. Unfortunately, but the basics were this. Obama did a lot of things by executive order that were illegal. And they were illegal because the executive orders that he issued, the ones that were controversial, the ones that actually got talked about in the news, they were things like, thou shalt not enforce the immigration law. We called it de facto amnesty, but what he said was, my directive to this law enforcement agency over which I have authority is to not enforce the law. All of the orders that Trump has signed have been, hey, there's a law here, and I want you to enforce it because it's your job, and I'm your boss, and that's what I want you to do. Incidentally, most of those have not only been the thing that I just described, where the president, who is the chief of the executive branch, whose job it is to execute and uphold the law, the chief law enforcement agency in the nation. Not only is he enforcing laws that currently exist, which is something that he said he was going to do throughout his campaign, and I applaud him for that, but in most of these positions, he's doing that, and he's doing it directly to overturn an executive order that was unconstitutional under the auspices of the Obama administration for the reasons that I've just described.
Right.
So get your bees in your bonnets, because Trump is he's on a fucking warpath, and it's beautiful, and it's exactly what I was hoping for. And honestly, it's more than I'd hoped for, and it's wonderful. Now, let's get to burning Berkeley. Steve, can you just kind of pick up for a minute and talk about what you've seen in the news? Give me some of your first impressions, and then I want to attack it. I want to attack it on an ideological and philosophical position.
Okay. What I know specifically about the Berkeley incident was the darling of the anti-leftist at this point, Milo Yiannopoulos, was to be giving a speech at UC Berkeley. A bunch of people around Berkeley didn't think that'd be a very good idea. So did they gather outside with their signs and protest? Did they buy up all the spare tickets and go in and sit in and talk over top of him speaking? Not all of them. I'm sure some did. I'm sure some picketed outside just fine. And then I'm not entirely sure how big it was, but I know it was several hundred because there were several hundred arrests made, let alone how many people had done it, that decided it was a great idea to break windows, trash stores, burn cars, assault folks, and the typical madness we've seen at any kind of thing that the leftists don't agree with. For what I've seen, it's always the, oh, that's just a few people thing. This was a massive portion of the crowd for a change that did it in Berkeley. At least that's what I've gathered. Which, carrying signs is free speech. Buying a ticket to the show, that could be considered free speech to go in and protest inside. You could be removed, but I guess you could still do that. It's still not harming anyone. But the instant you start to connect with someone else's nose, you violated everything you can about your own free speech presentation.
Okay. You are tracking that the speech didn't actually happen.
Yeah, it wound up canceled.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. They often there's almost always a bunch of libs in the audience, trying to shout over Milo. Anytime you have a conservative speaker, you're going to have a bunch of Dems in the audience that are going to scream and shout, and it's coercion. It is violence.
It's shut up. So I'll make noise until you shut up because I don't like what you're saying.
Right. They're attempting to shut down the free speech. And more importantly, your First Amendment right to free speech and the right to peaceably assemble does stop on private property.
Yes, it does.
You do not have the right to enter my home or my business or my church if I was so inclined. You do not have the right to enter my private property and express your free expression or free speech.
That's right.
It doesn't exist. That was a big deal with that was something that we talked about with the Trump stuff. Trump had people had protesters escorted out of his actual rallies. Never escorted away from the rally site, escorted out of the building, because it's a private function with private security, private funded. The hall is privately rented. It is a private venue. Your free speech stops at the door of a private venue. It's that simple. If you were to go into a concert, let's say a good concert, like some classical music, probably not one of the hair metal concerts or some slasher or something, because let's face it, you're just not going to shout down those speakers. But let's say you're at a piano recital and you start running your damn mouth. You're on your way out the door, son, because your free speech ends at arm's length when it begins to interrupt someone else's free speech. And they will scream free speech. It's my free speech. I have the right to speak. I have the right to speech. Yes, you do. And it stops when you take mine.
Yes.
I'm happy to let you speak. Absolutely. But when other people are paying to hear me speak, you are stealing from them. And you are oppressing me.
That's true. That's absolutely true. That's one of the most succinct ways you could have described that. It's a very sad thing because this is the same group of people that in the 60s were fighting to be heard over people that would stifle them. And now they're stifling the people they don't agree with. It's funny how the tables turn.
Yeah. So we see these black bloc movements, the Antifa. Let's okay, we don't have any viewers right now, and we're running up on 20 minutes to the hour.
Well, that was quick. Well, we started late too.
10 minutes.
Yeah. Definitions.
We wrote 10 minutes late. We could put off White Hats Matter until right at 2100.
Yeah, I'm good with that. We need to talk about Google's little bit of obfuscation.
Yeah.
And I don't know where you want to take this for a trigger, but I can start it if you want and simply say that it was called out on social media today that CNN had changed the definitions they were allowing you to read when you search the word fascism.
I got it. Be ready to jump in with that. I'm going to pick up with something else right now. I'm going to jump on the Antifa and the black bloc.
All right, let me get the definitions called up.
Okay, so these protests that we've been seeing during the Trump inauguration, we see these guys in black masks. We're everywhere that the liberals gather to protest, everywhere that the damn Dems gather to protest, we've got these guys showing up and causing, I mean, they're rioting. They're setting shit on fire. They're smashing shop windows. They're assaulting people. We've got this whole conversation about whether or not it's okay to punch a Nazi. And of course, all the lefties are like, oh, yeah, it's totally okay to punch a Nazi. Oh, really? Is it okay for me to go punch a Black Panther? No, seriously. If it's okay for you to punch a Nazi because you disagree with him, can I go out and punch a Black Panther? Can I go out and punch a tax collector? Can I go out and find a cop and punch him because I'm not sure where I was going with that one. I kind of like cops, sort of. I'm an Army guy. Cops are like our baby brothers. But my baby brother's a fucking fister. Bah! That's a forward observer. He bah! Used to be a combat engineer. Now he's a little bit more hardcore. A little more combat arm. Anyway, so you got the black bloc, and you see these flags they fly. They're half black and half something. So there's actually the black and pink. That's the anarcho-feminists. I think black and green is anarcho-capitalists. The one that we're seeing a lot of, though, is the black and red, anarcho-communists. Oh,
how does that work? Never mind. That's a whole nother. Go ahead.
That's no. We're going to talk about that a little bit. The black and red flag. It might as well just say, I don't understand how any of this works.
Yes, it should. Yes, it should. Wow.
And these groups are called ANTIFA, anti-fascist. These groups that are interested in communism. They're interested in communism, but they also say that they're anarchists. Now, like I was saying before, fascism is the furthest left you can go. Steve, what is the furthest right you can go, do you think?
I believe if we're going to run that way, the furthest right as it comes to American politics would be the most aligned with the original views of the founding documents of the nation.
No, that's actually basically center. No, the furthest right of the
furthest right, then you'd have to be under a religious control more than a government control. Yeah.
Nope, that's still far left.
Well, yeah, I guess it is.
The whole idea of the religious right is its own total fallacy. The religious right is basically center left fascism. Because I mean, it's still when you go to that, the only thing that's different between a totally atheist, communo-fascist regime and a totally dog like Sharia. The only difference between the two is
the location of power.
Law.
Yeah.
The difference is the name of the law.
If you're trying to get at the Libertarian Party, I could kind of see that to a sense, but it's not the way it's typically described.
Libertarians are too far left. Libertarians are.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
Libertarians are too far left for that.
Okay, go ahead. I'm not on the same page right now.
The Republicans are too far left. No, the furthest right. If fascism is the furthest left, then the furthest right is the zombie apocalypse. Is actual
anarchy.
Actual anarchy.
Yeah, that's true.
Now, there's no such thing as actual anarchy. It's not possible.
Not simply by human nature is not possible.
Right.
For the same reason communism doesn't work because of human nature.
Okay. Well, yeah, if sort of.
Well, if I can take, I don't need to work.
Pack animals. We're pack animals. At the barest minimum, you will have a social order that involves a father, a mother, and the litter. At the barest minimum, you have the family. You cannot have, if you have zero government whatsoever, everything will break down to families. Mm-hmm. And families will become larger and larger governmental organizations.
True.
As they go through generations, because the sons will not leave the cave, the nest, whatever, and they'll bring back more women, and they'll have more children, and they'll have more you'll have at least 3 children to a couple, and big grow. So yeah, the furthest right you can go is anarchy. I like to think of myself as a rational anarchist. Don't get that twisted. That is a dogmatic position of fantasy. I would like to believe that humans can live peacefully with one another and treat one another fairly and deal honestly with one another without a government being required to regulate those dealings in order to squash coercion, violence, and fraud. But I don't trust you fuckers. I would like to live in a world where everybody was good enough to each other that we didn't need a government. That if men wanted roads, a group of men would make a profit by building them. If men wanted hospitals, a group of men would make a profit by building them. If we wanted militaries, a group of men would make a profit by building them. I would like to believe that that's possible, but it's not. And that's why I'm a rational anarchist. Now, actual anarchy is actually pure democracy. If 51% of the people can vote to kill the other 49%, that's pure democracy.
That's right.
If you have pure anarchy, then half the people that can see the other half can choose to kill them all. And that's perfectly legal, as it were. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about the definition of fascism. Steve, are you ready to take over on that one?
Yeah, I got a little something for you. So earlier today on social media, some of you may have seen it, some of you may have not seen it. It was called out by a couple of different outlets. I'm not sure with who the story originated, but somebody had looked up the definition of fascism on Google and discovered it had been changed to differ. Let me back up a little bit. Most of us would accept, for a standard definition of something, the Merriam-Webster dictionary, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Merriam-Webster, and I'm reading this, I'm not going to screen share it, I'll just read it. The specific definition of fascism from Merriam-Webster, online, I don't know what version this would be attributed to in a print edition. Definition 1, often capitalized, a political philosophy, movement, or regime, and in parentheses, as that of the fascisti, that exalts nation and often race above the individual, and that stands for a centralized autocratic government headed by a dictatorial leader, severe economic and social regimentation, and forcible suppression of opposition. I'll read that last sentence again. Forcible suppression of opposition. Definition 2 is a tendency toward or actual exercise of strong autocratic or dictatorial control. Early instances of army fascism and brutality, and then it gives pronunciations and things. So where most of us would have taken Google to be a nice, fair way of doing things, they've got the pronunciations and the forms of the word and things listed, and this is straight just the word fascism in the search bar in Google and clicking on the Google definition. An authoritarian and nationalistic right-wing system of government and social organization. Synonyms: authoritarianism, totalitarianism, dictatorship, despotism, autocracy, and more, and I haven't clicked on that. In general use, it says, extreme right-wing, authoritarian, or intolerant views or practice. That enough for you to work with, Chris? Well, let me go back, because we've given our definition of the fascio thing. Even Google says at the bottom of this little tree, 1920s, from Italian fascismo, from fascio, bundle, or political group, and from Latin fascis. So they got it right that it's from the Italian, because, as we said, the initial use of it was the political party Mussolini was the head of.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit. That last sentence of the definition, the forcible suppression of opposition. So what happened at UC Berkeley this past week? What actually happened? Milo Yiannopoulos
had an opposing view to some people that were outside the building, and it got canceled due to the show of force in the streets used to prevent him from speaking.
Milo Yiannopoulos, editor-at-large for Breitbart News, Milo is a gay half Jew Catholic that has sex with black men, right? And so, of course, what is he? Well, he's a racist, bigot, Islamophobe, homophobe, cisgendered, white male privileged, blah, blah. I mean, I have literally sat here and seen videos of these leftists calling this half Jewish Catholic homosexual that dates only black guys from England. I've literally sat here and watched them lob all of those white privilege, male privilege, blah, blah, blah slogans at this guy. And it's precisely because he stands politically on the right and supported Donald Trump. And let me just, this is somebody who has made it very clear that one of the primary reason that he supports Donald Trump is because he's a homosexual, and he believes that Trump's strong position against radical Islam is the safest position that can be taken on behalf of homosexuals whose lives are in utter peril in Sharia nations.
Which is a pretty video widely available on the internet.
That's a pretty fairly reasoned position. So these groups of anti-fascist protesters forcibly oppressed his free speech in support of the leftist political agenda.
Mm-hmm.
This right here. This is my cyclic redundancy error face. That's too much fallacy to contemplate how just intellectual back birth could you possibly be? These people have been politically lobotomized by pseudo-fallacious definitional tricks.
There you go. Say that one more time.
I don't know if I can.
Oh, the viewers, back that up and listen to that part again. That was beautiful. You need to get that in print.
So,
These are the people that took 1984 and Brave New World as instruction manuals, not as cautionary tales.
Go ahead.
I did. I'm a man of few words. I can't go on like you can. It doesn't matter how I try. But it's interesting that you bring that up, because what they're claiming to fight is exactly what they're performing, as if somehow it's acceptable, or somehow that the term they're throwing around even applies. The idea that the power of the individual should be held sacrosanct, and calling that fascism, is obviously such a complete and utter misuse of the term that it would invalidate any other argument even close to that effect that the people using the word should be making. No one should be giving them the time of day for the argument. And yet that is what our mainstream media likes to push out there and let people talk about, instead of people talking about the truth behind all of it. What's the phrase from '84? Peace is, or war is peace, freedom is slavery.
Yeah, doublespeak, newspeak.
That's the one.
I even talked about newspeak, which essentially was descriptive of texting lingo.
Yes.
The man was a visionary. Make no mistake.
Truly. And I'm glad I didn't read it as much as a kid as I did since a lot of this started. I reread 1984 again early last year. And
just to put
451.
Just to put all this in perspective, there's a significantly high, probably 90% probability that you are watching me say these things to you on a television monitor with a camera on it.
Right.
And I am saying these things into the camera on a television monitor.
With a built-in microphone.
With a built-in microphone, yep.
Yeah.
Oh,
your smart TV in a nutshell.
It's a little different. This is voluntary. I built this system. I chose to put it in my house. I could throw it away if I wanted to.
Yep.
I don't know if I could want to, but if I could want to, I could comply with that without breaking the law.
Yes, which is important, I suppose.
So, just to recap.
Yeah.
Just to recap. The left lives in these fallacies. We've talked about the ad hominem. We've talked about the false equivalency and so on and so forth. The straw man. And tonight, of course, we talked about the a priori argument. Oh, well, I'm beginning from a position of I am already right, and so you can't argue against me. So they live in that. One of their favorite a priori argument is you're literally Hitler. On the far end there, just before North Korea and Kim Jong-un, it says actually literally Hitler.
Yeah, if we're going to parse definitions with the leftists, we should probably clarify literally and figuratively. Everyone smart enough to grasp what we're talking about already knows that. But if you don't, literally means, yes, at face value, what it is. If I'm literally starving to death, I probably haven't eaten in a very long time. If I'm figuratively starving to death, I'm really hungry. It's time to eat.
Yeah, if Donald Trump were literally Hitler, it would mean that Adolf Hitler had a change of identity, that he had his identity papers changed to have the name Donald J. Trump, and then undergone the cosmetic surgery to appear as he does. That is the only way he could be literally Hitler.
Yes.
Now, if someone was to say he is literally the same as Hitler, That statement, whether or not true, has validity as an argument. Of course, it's easily defeated because Trump's a super liberal Republican.
It hasn't killed 6 million people that disagreed with him.
Oh, yeah, there's that, huh? You know, I've gotten so used to our politicians that I've forgotten that Donald Trump hasn't ever killed anybody.
Right.
You know, I've gotten so used to our politicians that I almost forgot until I was stirring the pudding this morning. I almost forgot that Donald J. Trump is the first president to ever run on a pro-gay marriage ticket.
That's true.
Oh, I almost forgot that Donald Trump won the presidency with the first woman campaign coordinator.
That misogynist.
Huh.
He is not the first president with a foreign-born wife.
Nope.
That xenophobe.
Yeah. All right.
Happy news.
Let's go ahead and wrap this up. Steve, I believe you have a hashtag White Hats Matter story for us tonight.
I have a hashtag White Hats Matter story for us. This one's a little bit older. Thankfully, things have either been very peaceful the last few weeks, or things just aren't being reported because they are positive outcomes to an attack that the media doesn't want reported, because it's getting harder to find successful self-defense shootings within the confines of the prior week to our show. I tried to keep them updated, but somehow I'm just not getting the hits. I did for the first couple. This one was reported on January 10th, 2017, out of Virginia on the NBC Channel 12 affiliate there, WWBT, their website. Headlined as 2 2016 shooting deaths in Henrico, Virginia being the area, ruled as self-defense. I'm just going to kind of paraphrase the thing. I've got the whole article on my iThingy. So, 2 shooting deaths in 2016, both involving residents shooting at home invaders, have been ruled as self-defense, the Henrico Police Department said Tuesday. In one case, a 19-year-old, won't name the names, but a 19-year-old was armed with a baseball bat when he began to assault a female resident at an apartment complex on October 30th. So it is a fairly old story, but took a while to get the ruling. A second suspect, 2 home invaders, a second suspect went upstairs in the apartment, presumably to search for items to steal, police said. Police said when a male resident of the apartment came home, he found the door locked from the inside with the hotel-style latch. I'm assuming it's the flip bar and post. He broke into the residence and retrieved a gun from the kitchen, police said. As he entered the residence, Fox started moving toward him. One of the perpetrators started moving toward him, and the second assailant started heading down the stairs, also in his direction. The male resident shot at both assailants. People say the female resident also retrieved a gun and shot at both suspects. That warms the heart. They both shoot. The initial attacker, the one described as having the baseball bat, died from his wounds. Does not say DRT, but he did eventually at some point die from his wounds. The second suspect was injured. The second case that they ruled on, a 21-year-old and another suspect entered an apartment, different street, different area, on December 2nd, so just before the end of the year. The occupant of the apartment, sleeping on the sofa, had a weapon nearby and fired in self-defense when the 2 aggressors pointed guns at him, both wearing masks. One of the attackers died from his wounds. It doesn't really mention the other 2. Quote from Henrico Police, self-defense is an affirmative defense. After reviewing the facts of each case, we found that in both cases, the evidence was clear that the person who discharged the weapon did so in self-defense. In the case of the state of Virginia, the law does not allow them to charge the living co-defendant or co-aggressor with felony murder in these scenarios, because we have reported shootings in the past where that does hold. The investigations are ongoing as to other charges, such as breaking and entering and whatever else would apply. So there are a couple where, we're talking 4 aggressors. Half of them died before they could hurt somebody else. The other half, it seems, will be in jail for a while. Don't have any other details on the case, but the good things to take out from that are the fact these people were armed, were ready to defend themselves, successfully defended themselves. And in one case, The woman refused to be a victim just as much as the man did, and she did not rely on him for her defense.
Boom. And I call that a win.
We do. 2 of them.
Hell yeah. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're about 10 after the hour now, which means we've run long, but that's okay because we started late.
Yes, which means we were just right.
Damn Skippy. So we'll see you next Sunday at 2000 right here on the Brushfire Mind. And until then, remember, if you build a man a fire, you'll keep him warm for the evening. But when you set a man on fire, he'll be warm for the rest of his life. Good night.
Good night.